With the National Guard being deployed into New York subways, I couldn't help but feel that this is in preparation for something else. Like things are going to get really bad in this country long before they get better. And I think politics will result in chaos. I think that Democrat leaders and politicians are actively trying to burn down the country. And it may seem hyperbolic, but I literally think you've got these multicultural democracy individuals. They do not like the constitutional republic. They refer to this country as white supremacist. When Democrats and progressives say white supremacy, they mean constitutional republicanism and classical liberalism. I'm not exaggerating or being cute. That's what they're referring to. But most people know white supremacy to mean the belief that the white people are inherently superior or something like that. So when you go to the average American, you say white supremacy, that's what they think. But the left believes that our republicanist form of government, and I don't mean Republican Party, I mean that there are states that are represented to a larger federal government. They believe that is white supremacy. They want to break it all down. They want to open up the borders. They want to fundamentally change the nature and culture of this country. They are destroying it. The purpose of the National Guard is to keep you in line because they'll follow orders, even if it means something illegal. Well, my friends, it is beginning. This is not the first story. It won't be the last, but it's certainly a story. And Wokeness tweets, Pittsburgh police will no longer respond to certain calls and will instead be directing people to a telephone unit. Those crimes include thefts, harassment, criminal mischief, burglary, alarms, etc. Additionally, there will be only 20 police officers patrolling the entire city from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. It comes amidst staffing shortages. Let me play the video for you that they posted.
What was the big takeaway today?
Yeah, Susan, residents of the city will see a major change in the way police respond. They will no longer respond to calls that aren't considered in-progress emergency. That means calls like criminal mischief, theft, harassment, and most burglary alarms will all be handled by an enhanced telephone reporting unit. That means residents will file a police report over the phone. Officers will not respond unless it's an emergency. Also, between the hours of 3 a.m. and 7 a.m., there will be no officers at any of the 6 stations throughout the city. Call boxes that link directly to 911 have been installed for people to use in case of an emergency. And during the overnight shift, there will be as few as 20 officers to cover the entire city. The chief said today the data supports that.
Yes, it's enough to cover the entire city in those hours when we have 8% of the time people are calling. I'm confident in the decisions that we make that it impacts this bureau and the city in a much better way than we have in the past.
Now, the chief also acknowledging today that some of these changes are due to staffing shortages. He's down to 740 officers, well below the 850 they would like to have. Now, coming up new at 5, residents, city council, and the police union all weighing in on these big changes that begin Monday.
I'll tell you what's coming. At least from this, vigilantism. We're legit going to start seeing some Punisher level stuff. I'm not exaggerating, and it worries me. There's a viral video I showed last week where some guys were in a Home Depot parking lot. A guy was walking out of the store with a bunch of power tools, and they shoved him, knocked him to the ground, and beat the crap out of him. And they were saying things like, because of you, we have to pay more money. And it's true. When you steal, that loss gets incorporated into the costs of the other goods in the store and services. People have had enough. I'll tell you where I think this goes. No cops in the wee hours of the morning. That's when you're going to get a lot of property crime. Of course, during the day is obviously when you get most crime because when people are awake. But what does this ultimately lead to? What happens if you defend yourself? The police don't show up, so you pull out your gun. You're in PA, you're legally allowed to have one, and you shoot and kill the man wielding the knife trying to rob you. I'll tell you. If the man got caught for robbery by the cops, they'd let him go in 2 seconds. They'd say, what are you going to do about it? If you shoot this man defending yourself and he dies, the family will hunt you down. You will get Black Lives Matter protests. You'll be George Zimmerman. The police will come and arrest you. And if you're lucky, you'll get acquitted. And when you get acquitted, the rioters will still threaten your home, threaten your family, your children. So I'll tell you what I see happening. Sooner or later, someone's going to be out in the street with a mask on, and they're going to be armed, and people are going to start doing their own masked patrols. In New York City, Gavin McInnes was giving a speech to, I think it was like Republican club of some sort, and a bunch of Proud Boys were there. Far leftists descended on the area surrounding it and several blocks, threatening people, screaming at them, throwing things at people. When many of the Proud Boys began to leave, they would walk down the street and there's Antifa throwing stuff at them. So what happens? Eventually, the Proud Boys just say, okay, screw it. They want to go. Let's go. The Proud Boys run full speed at the far left. I believe one of the Antifa guys threw a bottle and then they run at him, get into a fight. And it's like mutual combat. The police are called. The police arrive. The police ask the far leftists to give a statement, and the far leftists refuse to give any identification, their name, and they flee. The Proud Boys, being good, upstanding conservatives, back the blue, baby, said, officer, here's my name and address. Thank you so much. And the cop went, you're under arrest. And they went, what, me? But we were the victims. And the cop said, I don't care. Those Proud Boys got years in prison. They may be out by now, I'm pretty sure. Would be interesting to talk to them, actually. We should look into that. They got years in prison. The Antifa guys, cops didn't even know who they were. They got away with it. Yeah, they said, well, we would have charged them if we knew who they were because it's gang violence. You see? So here's what I see happening. In a place like Pittsburgh, if you want to defend yourself and they find out who you are, expect Black Lives Matter to burn your home down. Expect the police to lock you in jail. Man, this is very much like how a comic book would start. The city was rampant with lawlessness. Activists would target anyone who dared defend themselves, but criminals ran free because the police were politically lacked the power to do anything about it. So people began to put on the masks because then, well, they can't stop the criminals and they can't stop those wearing masks. They don't know who they are. Vigilantism, dude. Watchmen is an interesting comic. I recommend you read it. Graphic novel or the movie, but the graphic novel is way more detailed and way better. In that one, it's basically the gangs were wearing masks. And when the cops would try to do anything to them, the gangs would retaliate. So the cops started wearing masks, which is not allowed. And so eventually you end up with vigilantes, heroes who would wear masks to protect themselves from law enforcement and from criminal gangs. But law enforcement mostly was into it for a while. But then eventually they passed a bill, like this is the graphic novel, that you can't wear masks anymore. Vigilantes are outlawed. And in the movie, in the graphic novel, Rorschach, he doesn't have any powers. He's just a guy who is strong, can fight, and wears a mask. The cops hunt him down. They put him in prison for being a vigilante, but they know that he's stopping bad guys. Granted, he kills people. He's a brutal, brutal, nasty guy. A lot of people like him. He's a moral absolutist, though. But I see us going in this direction. I'm reminded of the V for Vendetta scene where the inspector is saying eventually someone will do something stupid. It's a really interesting scene. It shows one of these authoritarian cops seeing a little girl running wearing the Guy Fawkes mask, so he shoots her in the back, kills her. And then people come up around this cop, and he's holding up his badge, and then they just scene cuts. But they probably beat him to death. Here's what I see happening. There's reports coming out of Haiti. I don't know if these are true. That if you're a cop and these gangs catch you, they will beat you in public while you scream and cry because you're on the other side. I would not be surprised if we see something similar here, whether you're a cop or otherwise. The police officers that are willing to arrest, people for minor infractions parading at the Capitol or something like this on January 6th, but they allow murderers to go free. If a guy robs a liquor store, the left and the government protects. I mean, look at this. Joe Biden apologized for calling a murderer illegal. That's where we're at. But if you're Daniel Penny or Daniel Perry, yeah, there's two of them. One guy in Austin, far leftists approached him with a rifle and raised it to his car, and he shot him and went to jail. And then you have the guy in New York where there was a deranged man in the subway threatening to kill people, and people have been killed in the subway. And so I think this one was Penny, puts him in a headlock, and now he's in jail. They'll come after you. There's only one thing you can do. If you are on that train, and I'm not going to give legal advice to anybody. I don't recommend you do anything. I'm saying if Penny, as this man screaming, I'll do this, I'll do that, pulled off his suit revealing a Superman costume and pulled on a mask, there'd be a video of the subway superhero who saved people from a deranged man threatening to kill others. The left would scream, "No! He didn't have to kill him!" The witnesses said their lives were saved. And everyone would say, who is the masked vigilante who stopped these people? Nobody knows. And Penny would not be in jail. Or not be going to jail. I think he's out on bond. But they're going to lock him up. They'll get him for something. With Pittsburgh doing this with police, this is where I feel like we're going. People are going to start putting on masks. And they're going to go out with baseball bats. And they're going to just beat the ever-living crap out of criminals. But guess what? It won't matter. There's no cops in Pittsburgh to even arrest the vigilantes. There'll be a news report that says man beaten with baseball bat, shocking story. And you'll get the details. You'll see a video of it. And it'll be a guy wearing all black and a ski mask beating a burglar. A guy robbing a liquor store gets cracked in the head because they're going to be like, there's no cops anymore. And then what? I don't know. This year is going to get absolutely wild. There's this really fun conspiracy theory. It's hilarious. People online, on Twitter, the conspiracy theory is that there is a device that can see into the future, and it stops at 2024. I will say this. You know, I feel fairly confident in being able to predict and see things. Not that I get everything right or could see everything. But for instance, I'll give you an example. Like in 2020, the left likes to play these videos of me saying 49 state landslide. It's mostly a meme referencing Ronald Reagan. But what I was actually saying is that, like Moody's Analytics, for instance, said the economy was so good, Trump could expect to see there's a slim potential of a landslide victory, but likely he could get a couple points above 50% and win the popular vote. And so my view is that Trump was walking towards victory, and we may have the same problem we have today. I wasn't wrong. What I was assessing was good data analytics and a good economy and a lot of factors that historically would say a president would win. We all saw that. What we missed, the shadow campaign to save the election. That's what they called it in Time magazine. I couldn't have known about that. What I mean to say is when I'm like, wow, look at all these indicators of Trump winning. Seems like he'll win. Trump didn't win. And the only assumption we could make off the data was that Trump was likely going to win. And in fact, Trump got more votes than any sitting president. And he's the first, I believe he's the first president to get more votes, but lose. He's the first president in the past 60 years to lose the bellwether states. So it's like the bellwether counties, like he won all these metrics, still didn't get there. Because we didn't expect what Time magazine referred to as the shadow campaign, universal mail-in voting, lawsuits, things like that. Ballot harvesting. Yeah. Call it whatever you want. Now, my point there is I could still see all of this stuff with these data points and be like, here's what I think might happen. And go, oh, you know what? I missed these things. I can't predict anything for 2024. I'm surprised Joe Biden's even still in the race. I can't see anything. I don't know what happens. Maybe at like December 31st, 2024, we'll all be sitting there being like, I can't believe what just happened this year. And then all of a sudden there's a flash. We're in a big, vast, open, white space standing there by ourselves like, what? Everything's gone. Your chairs are gone. Your house is gone. It's just you're in nothingness. And then you just see a big thing saying, game over. Now what? And then you go back from where you came from. The place you were before you were born or whatever. I have no idea. We'll see, man. Or maybe that's when it all begins. Maybe that's the real end game. We'll see. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.